What if I told you that your anger about Game Awards 2025 has almost nothing to do with the actual games that won? That the rage you're feeling right now, scrolling through Twitter, seeing your favorite game get robbed, is actually revealing something profound about human psychology, identity, and how our brains process loss. The Game Awards 2025 just happened, and if you're watching this video, chances are you're angry. Maybe Astrobot won Game of the Year and you think Balatro or Metaphor Refantasio deserved it more. Maybe your favorite game got snubbed in its category. Maybe you think the whole thing is rigged by industry politics. But here's what's fascinating. This happens every single year. Every year, millions of gamers feel personally attacked by awards show results. Every year, communities explode with accusations of robbery, corruption, and bias. Every year, we swear we'll never care about these awards again. And yet, every year we come back angrier than before. Why? I am Sergiu Popovici, I'm based in Munich, Germany, and today we're going to explore the dark psychology behind why Game Awards make us so irrationally angry. And trust me, by the end of this video, you're going to understand yourself and the gaming community in a completely new way. Let's start with the most important question. Why do we care about Game Awards at all? They don't change the games. They don't make your favorite game better or worse. They're essentially just opinions from a group of journalists and a public vote. So why does it feel like a personal attack when your game loses? The answer lies in something psychologists call identity fusion theory. This is a concept developed by researchers like William Swan that explains how we don't just like certain things. We absorb them into our sense of self. When you play a game for 100+ hours, when you connect emotionally with its story and characters, when you defend it in online arguments, something remarkable happens in your brain. That game becomes part of your identity. This isn't metaphorical. Neuroscience research shows that when we form strong attachments to media, the same brain regions activate when we think about that media as when we think about ourselves. Your favorite game isn't just something you enjoy, it's literally part of how your brain defines you. So when Game Awards voters pick a different game, your brain doesn't interpret this as they preferred a different game. Your brain interprets it as they rejected me. This is why the word robbed feels so viscerally correct. It genuinely feels like something was stolen from you. Because in a psychological sense, something was your validation, your identity confirmation, your sense that your taste and judgment are correct. Now let's talk about why we're so convinced the awards were rigged. Every year, without fail, losing communities claim the voting was corrupted, the judges were biased, or industry politics interfered. And here's the thing, sometimes they're right about specific issues, but the intensity and certainty of these beliefs reveal something called confirmation bias at work. Confirmation bias is our brain's tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information that confirms what we already believe. If you think Balatro should have won Game of the Year, your brain will automatically highlight every positive review of Balatro, every criticism of Astrobot, every conspiracy theory about Sony's influence, and every argument that supports your position. Meanwhile, your brain will minimize, dismiss, or literally not even register information that contradicts your view. Positive reviews of the winner, industry shills, statistical voting data, probably manipulated. Arguments from the other side, they just don't understand good game design. This isn't stupidity. This is how all human brains work. We're pattern recognition machines that evolved to make quick judgments and stick with them. Changing our minds requires significant cognitive effort, and admitting we might be wrong triggers psychological discomfort that our brains actively avoid. Here's where it gets even more interesting. The gaming community has developed what psychologists call a persecution narrative. Many gamers genuinely believe that gaming as a medium, and their favorite games specifically, are constantly under attack from mainstream media, casual audiences, or the industry. This persecution narrative creates what's called defensive identity fusion. Not only is the game part of your identity, but you also see yourself as defending it against hostile forces. This transforms a simple disagreement about game quality into a moral battle. You're not just defending a game, you're defending art itself, defending real gamers, defending what gaming should be. And when your game loses at Game Awards, that's not just a loss. That's confirmation that the forces you've been fighting against have won. That's validation of your persecution narrative. That's proof that they don't understand, don't respect, or actively oppose what you value. Let's talk about something called the endowment effect. This is a well-documented psychological phenomenon where we overvalue things we possess or identify with. In multiple studies, people consistently value an item more highly once they own it compared to before they owned it, even if nothing about the item changed. This applies powerfully to games. Once you've invested 80 hours into Metaphor ReFantasio, once you've connected with its themes and characters, once you've defended it in Reddit arguments, your brain has dramatically inflated its value in your internal psychological economy. It's not that you're wrong to love it, but your brain has made it psychologically impossible for you to evaluate it objectively. Meanwhile, games you haven't played or haven't connected with, your brain hasn't performed this value inflation on them. So when Astrobot wins and you haven't played it, your brain genuinely cannot understand how it could be better than your game, because your psychological valuation system has made your game artificially more valuable. Now I want to address something that makes this even more complex: parasocial relationships. This term, developed by researchers Horton and Wohl, describes the one-sided relationships we form with media figures and characters. When you play a story-driven game, you form parasocial relationships with the characters. You care about them, think about them, feel protective of them. Your brain processes these relationships using the same neural circuits it uses for real relationships. This is why spoilers feel like betrayal, why character deaths genuinely hurt, why seeing your favorite game succeed feels personally validating. So when Game Awards voters don't pick your game, it doesn't just feel like your taste was rejected. It feels like your friends were rejected. Like relationships that matter to you were dismissed as unimportant. The emotional pain is real, because the brain systems generating it are the same ones that process actual social rejection. Let's talk about the tribal warfare aspect. Social identity theory, developed by Henri Tajfel and John Turner, explains how humans naturally divide into in-groups and out-groups. We feel belonging and safety with our people, and suspicion or hostility toward others. Gaming fandoms are textbook examples of tribal identity. PlayStation versus Xbox, Nintendo versus hardcore gaming, indie games versus AAA, Souls-like fans versus accessibility advocates. These aren't just preferences, they're tribal identities, with all the psychological weight that implies. When Game Awards results seem to favor the other tribe, it triggers genuine threat responses. Your brain interprets this as your tribe losing status, resources, or legitimacy. The anger you feel has roots in ancient evolutionary psychology, where tribal competition was literally life or death. This is why fandom arguments become so vicious. You're not just disagreeing about games, you're defending your tribe against what your brain perceives as an existential threat from an enemy tribe. The stakes feel enormous because psychologically they are. Here's something really important: loss aversion. This principle, discovered by psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, shows that humans feel losses roughly twice as intensely as equivalent gains. Losing $5 hurts more than gaining $5 feels good. Apply this to Game Awards. The pain of your favorite game losing is psychologically more intense than the joy of seeing it win would have been. This is why gaming communities seem more angry about losses than happy about wins. It's not that we're naturally negative, it's that our brains are literally wired to feel losses more strongly. And here's the kicker: because losses hurt so much, our brains create narratives to explain them. We were robbed. It was rigged. Industry politics. These narratives serve a psychological function. They protect our egos and identities from the pain of loss by externalizing the cause. It's not that our game wasn't good enough, it's that external corrupt forces prevented justice. Now let's address the business versus art debate that always emerges around game awards. This debate itself reveals psychological processes at work. When we love something, we want to believe it succeeded on pure merit, on artistic quality alone. We want to believe the world is just and quality is objectively recognizable and properly rewarded. But the games industry is a business. Marketing budgets matter, studio relationships matter, platform holder influence matters, publisher politics matter. This creates cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable mental state when reality contradicts our beliefs. Rather than accept that the world is complex and quality alone doesn't determine success, many gamers resolve this dissonance by creating a clean narrative. True art versus commercial products, real gamers versus casuals, integrity versus corruption. These binaries are psychologically satisfying because they're simple and they preserve our belief in a just world where quality should win. But reality is messier. Games can be both artistic and commercial. Awards can reflect both genuine appreciation and industry politics. Voters can be both sincere and influenced by factors beyond pure game quality. So what about the actual psychology of the games themselves? Why do we connect so deeply with certain games that we take their award losses personally? The answer involves something called flow state, a concept developed by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Flow state is that experience of being completely absorbed in an activity, losing track of time, feeling challenged but capable. Games are specifically designed to induce flow state. And when we're in flow, we're at our most focused and our most vulnerable to forming deep associations. When you're in flow state playing a game, your brain is encoding powerful memories connected to intense positive emotions. The game becomes associated with some of your most psychologically rewarding experiences. No wonder you feel defensive about it. No wonder you want others to recognize its value. Your brain has literally recorded it as one of the most meaningful experiences you've had. Different games create flow through different mechanisms. Puzzle games like Balatro create flow through the perfect balance of strategy and chance. Action games create it through skillful combat. Story games create it through emotional engagement. But all of them are engineering psychological states that create powerful attachments. Let's talk about what happens psychologically when we engage in online arguments about game awards. Something fascinating happens. The arguing itself becomes rewarding. Each time you defend your position, each time someone agrees with you, each time you craft a clever response, your brain releases dopamine. You're literally getting a neurochemical reward for arguing. This is why gaming discourse becomes addictive. It's why you can spend hours in comment sections, why you keep checking replies, why you feel compelled to respond to everyone who disagrees. Your brain has turned arguing into a game that provides its own rewards, independent of whether you're actually changing minds or accomplishing anything. And here's the dark part. Negative engagement often provides more dopamine than positive engagement. Anger is energizing. Feeling righteous indignation is rewarding. Seeing the enemy tribe be wrong is satisfying. Your brain can become literally addicted to being angry about game awards. So what's the healthy response to all this? How do you care about games and gaming culture without falling into these psychological traps? First, recognize that your emotional investment is real and valid, but it's also somewhat constructed by your psychology. You can love a game deeply while acknowledging that your perception of its quality isn't purely objective. Second, practice perspective taking. Try genuinely imagining why someone might love the game that won. Not to agree with them, but to understand that their psychological relationship with their game is as real and valid as yours with your game. Third, separate game quality from identity. You can think a different game should have won while recognizing that this doesn't invalidate your taste or your experiences. Your favorite game doesn't need external validation to be meaningful to you. Fourth, be skeptical of narratives that require everyone who disagrees to be stupid, corrupt, or malicious. Reality is usually more complex than good guys versus bad guys. And fifth, Recognize when arguing is becoming its own reward. If you're spending hours in comment sections feeling increasingly angry, you're probably addicted to the dopamine of conflict, not actually defending something meaningful. Here's something I want to emphasize because I'm based in Munich and work with people from all kinds of backgrounds. Gaming is global, but gaming discourse is often culturally specific. Different regions value different things in games. Different cultures have different relationships with competition and criticism. What seems like obvious truth in one gaming community might be genuinely different in another, not because anyone is wrong, but because cultural values shape what we appreciate in games. One final psychological concept: anticipated regret. Research shows that we often feel worse about losses we think we could have prevented than losses we had no control over. This is why we obsess over voting strategies, why we analyze and reanalyze what could have been different, why we create elaborate theories about how things were stolen. We're trying to maintain the illusion of control. If we can figure out what went wrong, maybe we can prevent it next year. But the reality is that Game Awards results are determined by thousands of individual decisions, complex social dynamics, and factors way beyond anyone's individual control. Accepting this lack of control is psychologically uncomfortable. So we create narratives where control was possible but subverted. Now, if you're still with me and you've recognized yourself in any of these psychological patterns, that's actually a good thing. Self-awareness is the first step toward healthier relationships with gaming culture. You don't have to stop caring about games or awards, but you can understand why you care the way you do. And here's the truth that gaming communities often resist. It's okay for different games to win awards. It's okay for other people to love different games than you do. The gaming medium is rich enough, diverse enough, and meaningful enough to support multiple perspectives. Your favorite game doesn't need to win Game of the Year to be important to you. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this thought. The intensity of your feelings about Game Awards 2025 reveals something beautiful. You care deeply about games as an art form and as meaningful experiences. That passion is valuable. The gaming community's ability to care this much is part of what makes gaming culture special. But passion without perspective becomes toxicity. Love without understanding becomes tribalism. Investment without self-awareness becomes obsession. The goal isn't to stop caring. It's to care in ways that enhance your life and your community, rather than ways that leave you angry, exhausted, and convinced everyone who disagrees is your enemy. I'm Sergiu Popovici. I'm based here in Munich, Germany, and I'm always interested in discussions about psychology, gaming culture, and human behavior. If you found this analysis valuable, if you saw yourself in some of these patterns, or if you want to discuss this topic further, I'm contactable through the links in the description. Remember, your favorite game is still great, even if it didn't win an award. Your taste is valid, even if others disagree. And you can love gaming without letting awards discourse consume your mental health and well-being. Thank you for watching. Now go play some games you love, regardless of what awards they did or didn't win.
Become a hero. Tread carefully. One step further and you may shed your mortal sins. But the gate to the final domain does not open without refinement.
The strongest bond between people is always value, isn't it? I give you what you want, and you give me what I want.
It was all a lie from the start. We never had a choice.
I'm not fighting alone. From within this horde, many others are fighting beside me. The more noble the excuse, the uglier the truth behind it. One instant, 1,000 visions!
Sheriff Kierman, sighting target.